Hey, this is Hessian coming at you again. So, actually, gaming question for once instead of all the tangents I've been going off of. So, anyway, here's what I was looking at. My experience has been with Dungeons and Dragons for a long time. And then the Star Wars Fantasy Flight, obviously that's fairly new, so I'm fairly new with that. But before that, I used to do the Weston game Star Wars. And one of the things I loved about it, because you got the brick, a six-sided dice, and it was all skill-based. And I noticed Fantasy Flight kept that same concept, the skill-based. And anyway, something I was noticing, especially with Force Powers, because the Force and Destiny one's kind of the one I know the best. And when I'm looking at Force Powers, it seems like everything's a little bit more, for lack of a better term, generic. In other words, it's not specific on things, so it's almost you can interpret it in a lot of different ways. Whereas, like with 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, it seems very centered. In other words, this is it, and in this case you do this case you do this. Whereas the Force Powers and Fantasy Flight games give you a little more leniency, or a little more adaptation, I guess you could say, on how to use it. I was just curious if that's what everybody else thinks too, or if that's something they've noticed. Because I've had a couple questions that and unfortunately I don't have them right off the tip of my tongue right now. But when you're using a force power of some type, there's no hard, fast rule when you're reading it. It just seems very generic in a lot of ways, and you can interpret it meaning one thing or another. Whereas 5th edition, nope, this way it works, and here's the examples where you use it, and here's where you can't use it. So, just throwing an opinion out there if you guys agree with me on that or not. Laters.